Hello, my name is Craig Williams, and I'm the lead faculty member for Logistics and Supply Chain Management here at the School of Business Management. We're going to be trying something new this term, and we're going to be using what are called master chats. And this is going to be kind of a live chat or recorded chat that is presented to all students in all sections of the same course. And then this is going to be in addition to your regular live chat with your regular instructor, okay? So let me begin by pulling up the PowerPoint presentation. And as I said, this is SCM210, Introduction to Logistics and Supply Chain Management. And this is Unit 1, Introduction to Logistics. Now, this next slide is going to discuss how to be successful in this class. Okay, I know most of you have families, most of you are working full time, and so you don't have a lot of free time. So these are just going to be a few suggestions that I have for you as to how to be successful in this class. Okay, I strongly suggest that you carry either your computer, your laptop, your iPad, or your cell phone, smartphone with you, so that you can access your course materials at any point in time, okay? When you've got 10 minutes while waiting for something, you can pull up your cell phone and pull up the readings on your cell phone and read them, okay? I also know that, again, even though this is an asynchronous way of taking classes, meaning that you can essentially do your coursework at any time. From my past experience, I found that it's generally much more beneficial to you if you set aside a specific time of the day to work on your assignments, do your readings, and so on, okay? Without doing this, generally, there's always going to be something in the way, and you're going to be delaying working on your assignments, and so on. So again, set aside a specific time to do your assignments, okay? Read the assignments thoroughly. If you're not sure what the assignment is asking for, please contact your instructor and so on, okay? I strongly encourage you to join the live chats. You'll be able to ask questions of the instructor. If you are unable to watch the participate in the live chat, you can still earn extra credit by just simply watching the video of that chat and then submitting a 200-word review for extra credit, okay? Submit your assignments on time to avoid late penalties, okay? Most of the faculty will waive late penalties, but it's always beneficial for you to get your assignments in on time. You don't want a situation where you're constantly trying to catch up and so on, okay? Also, finally, read the gradebook feedback. Read what the instructor is saying about the assignment that you just submitted and make corrections based on what the instructor says are areas of improvement, okay? So if you've got spelling errors, or if you got grammar errors, or you didn't do enough research, take that to heart and make corrections the next time in order to get better grades, okay? So let's begin. As I said, my name is Craig Williams. I'll be your instructor for this first live chat. There'll be different instructors for the remaining units. But just to give you a brief background, I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry. I have an MBA in quantitative business analysis, both from Cleveland State University. And I have a PhD in operations management from Kent State University. My dissertation was on inventory management, inventory models, okay? And so, again, my background, my work experience, as you see, I did not start off working in academia. I did not start off teaching. I started working for a specialty chemical company called Ferro Corporation in Cleveland, Ohio. I worked for them for almost 18 years, went back to school to obtain my PhD. Since that time, I've taught at various universities in Savannah, Georgia, Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, Lafayette, Louisiana, Austin, Texas. I've taught at Southern New Hampshire University. I've taught at DeVry University, and now I'm here at Colorado Tech. So I have both the academic background as well as the practical background, okay? So your first assignment for this unit is your discussion board. And so this is an opportunity to introduce yourself to your classmates, okay? Talk about your background, where you're originally from, why are you in school? Why are you taking these classes? What do you like about logistics or supply chain management, okay? What are your particular hobbies? What do you like to do in your spare time, okay? Just to demonstrate, some of your interests, okay? What do you feel is your proudest accomplishment, okay? What makes you feel unique? What makes you feel different from other people, okay? And again, the purpose of this is just to introduce yourself so that, again, in a traditional education background, a brick and mortar situation, you're going to talk among yourselves. Well, you don't have that opportunity in an online class. So this is an opportunity to get to know each other. What are your likes, dislikes, where you have similarities, and so on. Many of you have been in the military, so you can talk about your military background and so on. So again, just a brief introduction into yourself and talk about your background, okay? All right, in addition to discussion board, right, there is a program that an assignment that we call IntelliPath, and it is an adaptive learning tool. And basically what happens with IntelliPath is that there are 3 steps, okay? The first step, which should be completed by Friday of each week, and this is what's called complete your determined knowledge, okay? Basically, this part of IntelliPath is designed to assess your level of knowledge. What's your starting point? How much of a background do you have in this particular topic and so on, okay? Once you complete the determined knowledge, then you can begin working on your learning path, okay? This is reading assignments, reading little snippets of lectures, and then answering questions based on that information, okay? The nice thing about IntelliPath is that you can always go back and practice on these modules and revise them to get better grades, okay? When you look on the assignment list, you'll see that there are certain due dates with regard to the IntelliPath, okay? This is just simply to let you know when the grades will be published. For the first time, the grades will be published, okay? You can go back and complete work on IntelliPath assignments up till the end of the class, okay? Now, the nice thing about the IntelliPath assignments is that you can go back and you can improve your grade, and you get an additional 5 points if you improve your grade. But again, suppose you have a situation where you didn't improve your grade, you got more questions wrong and so on. Well, that's not going to count against you. Only times when you improve your grade will that benefit you, okay? All right, so what are we talking about with regard to IntelliPath, okay? So we're gonna get a little brief history of the evolution of logistics, and we're going to define what logistics is, okay? Logistics is concerned with the movement of materials, components, finished goods from one location to another, okay? And the main purpose behind logistics is severalfold. Number one is obviously we want to do it at a reasonable price. Do we want it at the lowest possible cost? Maybe not, all right? If we get at the lowest possible cost, that may mean that we may have delays in delivery. We may not be able to deliver all the units that are necessary and so on. So again, when we're dealing with logistics, we're concerned about the movement of materials from raw material supplier to component manufacturer, to finished good manufacturer, to warehouses and distribution centers, to retail stores, and then finally, ultimately to the customer, okay? Now, there are several different types of logistics, okay? There are in-house logistics where essentially you have your own trucks, you have your own distribution centers, and so on. In some situations, you have what are called third-party logistics firms, where essentially they are concerned, they handle all the logistics stuff. So preparing the paperwork, loading it on the truck, trucking it to a particular location, offloading it, and so on, okay? We have international logistics where essentially we're shipping from one country to another, and that's going to involve making sure that the taxes and the tariffs are paid for, that we're not violating any kind of local content laws, that we've met all the specifications for it to clear customs and so on, okay? With regard to logistics services, okay? We can deal with something called, boy, I'm drawing a blank here, but essentially, where essentially we send it to a distribution center and they break it into smaller units where it can then be sent to a particular location. So let's say a company, cereals, let's say we have General Mills, Kellogg's, and Post, okay? So a company like Walmart, they're going to get a truckload of cereal from those three companies. Now, is any individual store going to be able to stock an entire truckload of each brand of cereal? Probably not. So what one logistics service is essentially is they're going to take those truckloads and then palletize, break them down into smaller units, and then palletize them and then deliver them to the individual store. Okay. Excuse me for a second. I have to stop here. Okay, sorry about that. I had a brief interruption, okay? Supply chain management definition, okay? Supply chain consists of raw material suppliers, component suppliers, finished good manufacturers, warehouses, distribution centers, retail stores, logistics functions, and so on. And a supply chain is essentially a series of interconnected businesses designed to get the product from the manufacturer to the customer, okay? And supply chain management is just simply managing all those functions, knowing what kind of manufacturing process you're going to have, the type of workers you're going to need, the amount of raw material you're going to use, how much can you store in the warehouse, and so on. All this is part of supply chain management, okay? Inventory and warehouse management. Inventory is essentially any goods that we have for future use. There are several different types of inventory, right? The key thing about inventory management is to know how much you have, right? When do you need to order? And how much do you need to order in that situation, okay? With regard to warehouse management, we need to know where the items are stored, how much we're capable of storing. There may be situations where we can flip the warehouse from time to time, where essentially, let's say we sell automobile tires, okay? And we're up north. During the winter months, we're going to sell much more snow tires than we are regular tires. So we would want to move those snow tires closer to the loading docks than the regular automobile tires. So again, warehouse management deals with how much do we have, where's it at, how do we pick it from the warehouse, and so on, right? The importance of logistics to business success. The key thing with regard to logistics, okay, is essentially cost and customer satisfaction, okay? We want to keep the cost as low as possible, but we also want to make sure that the customer is happy with our services and such. Okay, and then finally, current and future trends with regard to logistics. Okay, we are starting to see situations where more and more organizations are outsourcing their logistics functions. They just simply don't have the money or the expertise to handle these logistics functions, particularly when we're dealing with international logistics. And so generally they hire third-party organizations to deal with this, okay? All right, as I said, you can earn extra credit by attending the live chat, okay? These opportunities occur once a week. By simply logging on and attending the live chat for a certain period of time, you will get the extra credit. But don't fret if you are unable to attend the live chat when it's scheduled. You can still earn credit. All you have to do is review the archived live chat, submit a 200-word summary of the content. The archive review summary must meet the following expectations. You might have to summarize the content of the chat, label the document chat credit, and the chat and summary must be submitted within 1 week of the live chat for extra credit, okay? Your instructor has the discretion to determine whether or not to award the points, okay? So what are the elements of a supply chain? Well, it depends on your viewpoint of a supply chain, okay? So in some situations, we can think of the elements of a supply chain as being raw material and component suppliers. A raw material supplier would be something like, when I worked at Ferrell Corporation, we used a lot of raw materials to make the glass. So raw material suppliers supplied quartz, they supplied borax, they supplied cobalt oxide, they supplied titanium dioxide, and so on. All these components would then be made into a glass for ceramic coatings, okay? On the other hand, you can have component suppliers, where these are partially assembled elements that go into a larger component. So let's say we're building computers, okay? So we're going to have a series of components in that computer. We're going to have hard drives. We're going to have memory chips. We're going to have a motherboard. We're going to have a processor. We're going to have a electrical supply. We're going to have fan, okay? All of these go into building the finished product, okay? There are going to be transportation services. Again, this is the logistics function. Transporting it from point A to point B. And as I said earlier, we're mainly concerned about cost and customer service, getting it to the customer in a timely fashion and getting everything there that the customer has ordered, okay? We also have, supply chain can also have manufacturer and service providers, okay? A manufacturer is somebody that produces a tangible physical item. Tables, chairs, desks, computers, textbooks, those kind of situations, okay? Again, there are various ways of manufacturing different products, okay? If the product is highly customizable, we're going to use something what's called the job shop layout, where essentially we're working on one product at a time, okay? On the other hand, if the products are highly standardized, we're going to use something called an assembly line, like you see an assembly line on automotive manufacturing, okay? Service providers provide a service, okay? A service is an intangible item. You can't pick it up, you can't move it around. Service providers would be things like restaurants, hotels, dentist office, doctor's offices, and so on, okay? Warehouses. Warehouses are just simply places where finished goods, raw materials, finished goods are stored for later use, okay? Generally, with regard to warehouses, they don't do any kind of palletizing or anything like that. They're just there for storage, okay? Distribution centers do palletize, they do extra elements to add value to these situations, okay? And then finally, retailers. These are the end of the supply chain. This is where the items are going to be put so that the customer can then come in and purchase these items. Okay. Now, all right. Another way to look at a supply chain, again, is to divide it into different elements. So purchasing elements, operation elements, distribution elements, and then the integration of the three. So purchasing elements deals with purchasing the raw materials, components, and then finished goods. So essentially in this situation, right, if we're a manufacturer, we're going to need components and raw materials. So we're going to need to identify suppliers of those raw materials and those components. We're going to negotiate a price. We're going to negotiate a delivery schedule and so on. So this is all part of the purchasing element, okay? Operations elements deals with manufacturing the product or providing the service. All right, how are you going to manufacture the item, or what kind of service you're going to provide, where you're going to store the items once they're finished, and so on. Distribution, it deals with distributing it from the manufacturer to the retail store, making sure that, again, the item is sitting on the shelf when the customer wants that item, okay? And then finally, integration. We need to integrate all three of these elements together, okay? If there is a breakdown of any one of these individual elements, then the customer is not going to find the product or service that they're looking for, okay? So we cannot purchase a certain raw material. The plant is just shut down the plant's gone on strike, okay? Well, without the raw material, we can't manufacture the product, we can't distribute the product, okay? With regard to the operations, okay? Let's say we have a breakdown on our piece of equipment that manufactures a certain product. Again, since we cannot manufacture, we've got the raw materials sitting in our warehouse, but we cannot manufacture the product. So that means we cannot distribute it. That means the customer is not going to find the product sitting on the shelf. And then finally, distribution, okay? We've got the product manufactured, it's sitting in the warehouse, it's ready to go. The trucking firm has reneged or they're not delivering on time. That presents problems, okay? So here's an example of a generic supply chain. Excuse me. As you see here on, as you're looking at the screen, it would be on the left-hand side, you have the raw material suppliers, okay? These are the items, these are raw materials, you know, such as chemicals, base elements, base items, and so on, plastics, and so on, okay? These are the materials that are used to manufacture components, okay? So we take the raw materials, we manufacture those into components, okay? These components and raw materials are then sent to a product manufacturer where they're then used to complete and manufacture finished goods, okay? The finished goods are then sent to warehouse and distributors where they're held pending requests from the retail stores, okay? Retail stores get them from the distributors, put them on the shelf, the customer comes in and purchases the items, okay? In between all these elements, as you see down here, we have transportation and storage activities. So we're transporting it from one location to another, or we may be storing it pending future use, okay? So again, a trucking firm would take our raw materials, transport them into the component manufacturer where they would then be stored in a warehouse pending future use and so on. Now, down at the bottom, we have product and service flows, okay? This is the way, we go from the raw material supplier to the retailer, okay? This is where the product flows or the service flows, okay? So we're going from the raw material to the retailers, right? And you're thinking, what about services, okay? Well, services still use raw materials, components, and so on, right? They have, let's say a restaurant, they have china, they have glasses, they have silverware, they have napkins, they have food products, and so on, okay? All these can be used to provide a service, okay? Now, on the other hand, we also have recycling and returns going in the opposite direction, going from the end customer back to the manufacturer or component manufacturer and so on. So again, we can do recycling. Let's say, right, we have a company like Delco who makes automobile batteries, okay? The manufacturer of the batteries, they send them to the retailer, okay? A customer purchases battery. As part of the purchase, they have to turn in their old battery. The old batteries are then returned to the manufacturer where they're taken out, the lead content is reclaimed and then reused, okay? On the other hand, we can have product returns, okay? You purchase an item, it doesn't fit, it's not the right color and so on. You can return it either for store credit or to get your money back, okay? The final flow that we're going to have here at the bottom flows in both directions. And it deals with information, funding, planning, activities, and so on. So again, we're having information flowing in both directions, okay? So here at the end product manufacturer, they're planning on producing product X next week. So they know that in order to produce product X, they need component number 1, 2, 3. So they can look at the component manufacturer and see if they have that component in stock, or if they're scheduled to produce it in the next week or so, okay? If not, they're going to have to delay their production, okay? Again, once the sale is complete, we're exchanging funds, okay? The customer pays the retailer pays the distributor pays the end product manufacturer, who pays the component manufacturer, and so on, okay? Planning, again, deals with in both directions, okay? So we're dealing with when to order, how much to order, when to deliver, and so on. So again, we're using a lot of information with regard to the supply chain, okay? So again, product flows, we talked about product and service flows, we talked about recycling and product returns, okay? We talked about information flows, financial flows, the funds flowing in both directions, all right? Planning activities with regard to deliveries and production schedules and so on, okay? And then finally, integration of all the various functions, okay? If there's a breakdown in any one of these systems, okay, the customer's not going to find that product where he or she wants it or he or she expects it to be, okay? All right, supply chain coordination. Coordination must occur in order to synchronize the delivery of the right product at the right time, in the right quantity, at the right place, okay? So if all the components of the supply chain do not work together, do not synchronize their activities, the customer's not going to find that product sitting on the warehouse, okay? It's very much similar to if you watch some of these Olympic rowing events where they have the 8 people in the boat and they're rowing in sync, okay? If you notice, they all row at the same time. That makes it much faster. That makes the boat go much faster. You cannot have 8 people doing their own thing at different times, okay? And so it's very important that the supply chain organizations coordinate and synchronize to get the right product to the right place at the right time. Give an example. Several years ago, I was working with a company that produced the Nomex cloth, the fire retardant material, right? I was working with the manufacturer of the Nomex, and then I was also working with the company that purchased the Nomex and made the fireproof suits. And the company that was making the fireproof suits was having all kinds of problems with regard to deliveries and scheduled deliveries. They would place an order, they would get an order that was not on the right date, it was not in the right amount, it was not the right material, and so on, okay? Upon inspection of the supply chain, we've discovered that there was an intermediate warehouse in there. And so what was happening is the company that was making the suits was ordering directly from the company that was manufacturing the cloth. The manufacturer of the cloth was shipping the cloth to a warehouse, and the warehouse was sending it to the manufacturer of the suits. So there was not a coordination of the various entities involved, and that led to major problems. Once we identified that there was an intermediate warehouse in there, we resolved that issue. And again, we eliminated some of these, we cleared up, we improved the coordination of the supply chain, okay? All right, again, there are a number of different situations where the supply chain can be disrupted, okay? The supply chain can break down. There can be environmental factors such as natural disasters, extreme weather, disease, and so on, okay? You know, we just had a major shutdown of the economy for almost an entire year because of the COVID-19, where again, companies were not manufacturing product. Restaurants were closed down, so they didn't need their food stuff. So that caused problems disrupting the supply chain. Several years ago, we had these earthquake and tsunami in Japan, which basically shut down much of the automotive industry because the supplier of the driver's side airbag was inundated by the flood, and that shut down, and they couldn't manufacture the airbags, okay? We have geopolitical disruptions, political instability, trade restrictions, terrorism, theft, and so on. All right, you know, you can have situations where, again, material is being transported via truck from point A to point B. The truck can be hijacked, the material can be stolen. All right, we have situations where there are trade restrictions where, again, one country will restrict the amount of material that can come in, or they will impose taxes and tariffs and those kind of situations, okay? We have political instability right now in a number of countries. Venezuela, for example, you know, again, where essentially they're limiting the amount that can be shipped in, what can we charge for those items and so on. All right, at the start of the COVID situation, we had disruptions due to people hoarding and such, okay? Again, that's economic disruptions. Again, demand shock. You know, at the start of the COVID situation, you could not go in the grocery store and buy toilet paper. You could not buy paper towels. You could not buy antibacterial soap and so on. That caught because essentially people panicked and just went in and bought all kinds of this stuff, okay? We have price volatility where essentially prices can skyrocket overnight due to inflation or any other situation, okay? Give you an example, okay? Many years ago when I worked at Furrow, right, we had a product called cobalt oxide. It's the product that gives you the nice bright blue color that's on the inside of your ovens, okay? At that time, cobalt oxide went from $3.60 a pound to $25 a pound, okay? That caused a lot of problems. We can have currency fluctuations where essentially some countries can manipulate their currency so that, again, they're able to purchase products at a lower rate. All right, we can have technical disruptions, IT disruptions, where essentially technical services go out, where essentially you can't access data, or you cannot submit orders in those kind of situations. You can also have infrastructure risk, where essentially you know, the trucking firm goes out on strike, or a bridge is declared unsafe, and that causes problems. You can have traffic accidents that cause disruptions and so on. So there are all kinds of supply chain disruptions that can occur, okay? Now, let's talk about the history of logistics, okay? Logistics has been around for thousands of years, okay? If you look back at history, okay, the builders of the pyramid, right? They got the sandstones from hundreds of miles away. They loaded the blocks onto boats. They shipped it up the Nile River to the place where they were building the pyramids, and so on. All right. The stone circle called Stonehenge in England. Okay. Those stones are what's called blue stones. And the nearest place for bluestone is over 250 miles away. Somebody or some group of people had to transport that material from point A to point B, right? And so logistics have been around for many, many years, okay? Now, logistics has been moved from a compartmentalized approach to an integrated approach, okay? In other words, okay, if we go back to our supply chain example, okay, the raw material supplier would hire their own logistics firm to transport it to the component manufacturer. Component manufacturer would hire their own trucking firm to transport it to the finished goods material manufacturer, and so on, okay? Each one doing what was best for them, okay? Well, we found in many situations that, you know, what may be good for one part of the supply chain may not be good for the entire supply chain. So we have to coordinate, we have to work together in that situation, okay? So again, sourcing and many of the functions that led into production transition, transition inbound logistics. So again, when we're talking about materials coming into production, right, we're dealing with inbound logistics. When we're dealing with distributing the product from the manufacturer to warehouses and distribution centers, we're dealing with outbound logistics, okay? Again, also when we're dealing with logistics, we have to deal with inventory management, packaging the material handling, right? And storage can also be split into inbound and outbound logistics, okay? Packing the material. The purpose of packaging is to make sure that the materials arrive in the state in which we transport, in which we loaded them up, okay? You know, again, the more often you handle something, the greater the likelihood that those items are going to be damaged. And we also have to be concerned about storing the items, okay? Items can be damaged while sitting in the warehouse. You can have flooding, you can have a fire, you can have somebody on a tow motor run into some material and so on and damage it and such, okay? So again, we have to be concerned about all these elements, okay? Some key things that have occurred in the past, okay? Back in the 1980s, there was transportation deregulation, okay? Where essentially, prior to the 1980s, is essentially transportation was highly regulated. They determined what to charge for a particular route. They determined who was going to have those routes, what companies were eligible to participate in that situation, right? So in the 1980s, transportation was deregulated, and that created a opportunity for anybody to come in, you know, set up a trucking industry to undercut prices, come up with better schedule, and so on, okay? Another situation that we're starting to see is the ability to monitor and control the supply chain, okay? And again, this goes back to UPS, FedEx, and so on, where essentially you can log into the computer and find out where a package is at any given point in time, okay? You know, prior to, you know, computers and so on, you sent something off, you were told that, you know, it's expected to reach there between this date and this date, okay? But if it didn't arrive, it would take at least a week to track it down. Well, with computers today, we know where any item's is at any given point in time. We can track it down and so on. We're seeing barcodes and RFID tags. You know, RFID stands for radio frequency identification tags, okay? So again, we don't have to go in there and write what this particular product is. We can just scan the barcode and know what it is. We can get all kinds of information. What's the name of the product? Who is the manufacturer? What is the size of the product? What's the per unit cost and so on, okay? RFID tags have the ability to provide even more information than barcodes, okay? All right, we're also starting to see growing infrastructure to supplier of a global market, okay? We're seeing more and more businesses, using infrastructure, railways, ports, airports, highway systems, and so on. So again, we're seeing better infrastructure to transport the materials, okay? Logistics, as I said, logistics is the process of coordinating and moving resources, people, materials, inventory, and equipment from one location to storage at a desired destination, okay? Logistics is an important element of a successful supply chain. It helps increase the sales and profits of a business that deals with production, shipment, warehousing, and delivering products, okay? Again, logistics is concerned about lowering the cost, but also making sure that the product get to the customer in a timely fashion where he or she wants them, okay? In addition, reliable logistics services can boost the business's value, helping them maintain a positive public image. Think about the last time you went into a grocery store to purchase a particular item and it wasn't on the shelf, okay? You probably were not very happy about that. You may have gone to the manager, complained, and he said, well, we're just simply out of stock in that situation. We're going to get a new supply tomorrow, and so on. You go back tomorrow and it's sitting on the shelf, you're happy. But suppose you went back the next day and it wasn't sitting there, okay? You're not going to be happy with that. You may even stop buying at that particular store, that particular location. You'll go someplace else. So there's a loss of goodwill, a loss of public image, and such, okay? We have a number of different types of logistics, okay? Inbound logistics, basically we talked about that a little bit, where we're dealing with logistics coming in from supplier, raw material supplier and component manufacturer into the raw material, end product manufacturer. So they're coming into a particular location. Outbound logistics, dealing with the movement of materials from the end product manufacturer to warehouses and distribution centers, okay? We can have third-party logistics, where essentially is they handle everything with regard to the logistics function. You just simply drop it off at their site, or you can have them come and schedule to pick it up. They schedule they schedule delivery of the item, they deliver it, they notify you that the item has been delivered as such, okay? There's also something called fourth party logistics, where essentially is they only deal with a part of the logistics function. So again, you may hire a third party logistics firm to deliver a product, but you may hire a fourth party logistics firm to deal with making sure that all the customs documentation is correct, okay? Reverse logistics, again, talks about returns and recycling materials, okay? Give me an example. The company that I work for, Ferro Corporation, they sold the material that went on the Black Kettle barbecue, Weber barbecue grills, okay? That material was highly toxic, couldn't be put in landfills. So again, they collected it, they dried it off, they sold it back to Ferro, who then used that to produce more product to sell it back to Weber barbecue grills, okay? We have military logistics, movement of military supplies and so on. We have event logistics, which deals with a particular event, a concert and so on, okay? All right, I'm gonna pause the meeting. Okay, logistics services, all right? Logistics services are there to, in the case of where you lack expertise with regard to logistics function, okay? They can manage transportation services. Again, scheduling pickup, drop off, again, transportation and so on. You can do contracted brokerage and consulting services, such as, again, hiring somebody to deal with the customs situation, okay? You can have somebody analyzing supply chain and design, making sure that it's as efficient as possible, getting the products to the customer in a timely fashion. We can have warehousing services where, again, we can have a third-party warehouse where, again, extra items can be stored. We can do transportation management, making sure that hiring firms to transport the materials, and again, reverse logistics. We have e-commerce and payment management solutions where dealing with the payment to the various entities with regard to the supply chain, okay? You know, when the customer purchases the item, the retail store can log into an e-commerce website, then send payment to the distribution center, who then can pay the end product manufacturer. Supply chain management involves the organization and control of all management activities along the supply chain. It involves managing relationships between the various entities in the supply chain so that, again, they benefit the entire organization. The key thing with regard to supply chain management is that we're not there to benefit one single entity, one single organization within the supply chain. We're there to benefit all of them, okay? One thing we'll see a little bit later on is we're trying to maximize what's called supply chain surplus, okay? So essentially, all right, when an item gets to the retailer, okay, a series of costs have been adding up. And we know what that end cost is, all right? We also know what we're going to sell that item to the customer is, okay? The difference between the sales price and the accumulated cost, that is what's called the supply chain surplus. We're trying to maximize that, okay? So supply chain tracks and controls the processes that produce goods and provide services, all right? So we're monitoring the logistics firms, we're monitoring the manufacturing process and so on, okay? Supply chain management keeps the products, information, and finances flowing. Okay. Supply chain managers have to answer the following questions. How much should we produce? Okay. Well, you can just simply say how much, whatever we produce, whatever the customer wants. The problem is we don't know how much the customer wants. You know, we don't know what the demand's going to be. So we have to produce in anticipation of what the demand's going to be. So we have to anticipate or forecast customer demand, okay? How much inventory should be carried, okay? So you finish the product, you stick it in the warehouse, you stick it in there at inventory. Well, inventory costs you money. You had to borrow money to produce the items. You have them in the warehouse, they're costing you a storage fee, right? And so inventory is costing you money. Now, on the other hand, if you don't have enough inventory, we talked about this earlier, you can have a loss of goodwill, loss of customer credit, and those kind of situations, okay? How will the products be distributed to the customer, okay? In many situations, okay, if there is sufficient supply, right, you give the customer how much they want, how much they requested, okay? Now, on the other hand, there may be situations where supply can be limited. Think back to last Christmas where one of the gaming systems was in limited supply. And so the manufacturer had to restrict the distribution. They had to control the supply, okay? And that was the situation. Who got what, who got how many different Gaming Boy units, okay? How will payment work? When will payment occur, okay? We also have to be concerned about legal, environmental, and security concerns, okay? Are we transporting it in a legal fashion? Are there any environmental concerns that we have to be aware of, okay? And such, okay? Inventory management seeks to have the right quantity on hand at the right place and time while minimizing cost to the organization, okay? So we want to make sure that we have enough information to meet the customer demand, but not so much inventory that we increase our cost, but so little inventory that we're stocking out. So we have to be concerned about inventory cost, okay? And there are a number of costs that inventory incurs. First off is holding costs. And this is the cost you incur for keeping the items sitting in the warehouse, a finished product, raw material, and so on, okay? Inventory holding costs are cost per unit per day, okay? And they're a kind of a linear cost. So if it's $1 per day, per unit per day, if you have 1 unit, it's $1 per day. If you have 10 units, it's $10 per day, okay? Ordering costs, these are the costs you incur for ordering an item. So writing up the purchase requisition, writing up a purchase order, transporting it to, mailing it to the supplier, who then produces an invoice. The items are then picked from the warehouse and then palletized and shrink wrapped and loaded onto a truck. These are all concerned about ordering costs, okay? An ordering cost is a cost that is per order. Doesn't matter whether you order 1 or 1,000, it's just simply one ordering cost, okay? And so it kind of looks like an arc, okay? Purchasing costs, these are the items for purchasing the items from your supplier or your manufacturer. And then you have shortage costs. These are the costs you incur for not having the item sitting on the shelf. You may have to spend additional money to expedite the delivery of the material. You may have to lose goodwill because the customers become disappointed in you delivering the items and such. Okay. There are many different types of inventory. We talked about component and raw material inventory, okay? We have what's called work in process inventory. So think about your manufacturing process, okay? You're starting to assemble a computer, a vent for that goes over a hood or an oven, and so on, right? Work in process are those items that are partially assembled, have not been completed, okay? Finished goods inventory. These are finished good products that are available for sale, okay? We have what's called maintenance, repair, and operating supplies, okay? Maintenance supplies would be like cleaning materials and so on. We have repair supplies. These are components that can be used to repair equipment. We have operating supplies, which would be, you know, again, things like oil for oiling up the equipment and those kind of situations, or ink for inking up a printing press and such, okay? Inventory can be stored either in a centralized location or in decentralized locations. Right? In a centralized location, all the inventory is stored in one single location. Since it's stored in a single location, we can cut down on the amount of inventory because we can supply for various locations. Right? So we can cut down on the amount of inventory stored, but it may take longer to get to the customer because, again, that warehouse is going to be centrally located. It may take longer to get to the customer. On the other hand, we could have decentralized inventory storage, where we have many different distribution centers throughout the country, right? That's going to increase our amount of inventory because, again, each distribution center is going to have a certain amount of inventory. But again, it's going to improve our customer satisfaction because they're going to get the product that they want on a much quicker basis. When dealing with warehouse management, we have to be concerned about warehouse capacity. Not only is the storage size, again, you know, if we're storing, let's say, appliances like washers and dryers and refrigerators and so on, okay? The amount of ability to, the number of items that we can store is going to be considerably less than if we were storing nuts and bolts or cell phones and those kind of situations, okay? Just as you can have centralized and decentralized inventory, we can have centralized and decentralized warehouse locations. Again, with centralized warehouse, we cut down the amount of inventory, but again, the customer service may suffer, okay? We also have to be concerned about the warehouse layout, where the items are in relation to the shipping dock, okay? So when an item comes in, or when an order comes in, we have to go through the warehouse and pick those items from the shelves. So we have to know where they're at, and we have to know how much we have, okay? Now, with regard to layout, okay, there are a number of different ways of picking the items from the warehouse, okay? We have what's called an out and back route, where essentially, oh, we need product X. We look it up on the computer. We know that it's on aisle 3. We go to aisle 3. We pick it up. We bring it right back, and then it's put on the pallet. We can also have what's called picking routes, where essentially is we come up with a series of items, right? And their location, and we go throughout the entire warehouse, picking these and putting them into kind of like a shopping cart or a pallet, and then bringing them back to the warehouse, okay? All this is not, knowing where the items are is not possible without a warehouse management system, okay? Warehouse management system tells you where an item is stored, how many you have in storage, right? Where it's located, what the value of these items are, right? And so again, you can keep track of your costs in that case, okay? What's the importance of logistics, okay? Many companies include logistics as a major component of their corporate strategies. Companies that fail to adopt this new logistics strategy find themselves at a major disadvantage, and that's very hard to overcome. Again, it's not cost effective. And so many firms have developed logistic practices that look at what are called key performance indicators, right? They look at logistics costs, they look at increased profitability, they look at market share growth, they look at on-time deliveries and so on. So basically we're looking at the performance of the logistics function, okay? How well it's doing, okay? Some current trends with regard to logistics, okay? We're seeing what's called just-in-time inventory, where essentially our suppliers hold the inventory and deliver it to us just when it's needed, okay? When I was working on my dissertation, I was working for a small company called Johnson Controls, and they made the seats for the Ford Econoline Ford vans, okay? We would make the seats about every 45 minutes. We would have 8 sets of seats that we would load onto a semi-truck. The semi-truck would leave. About 45 minutes later, they would be at the Ford plant. They would be offloaded. And within 2 to 8 hours, those seats would be installed in the van. So again, we're delivering the inventory to the customer just when they're needed. We're also seeing vendor managed inventories, okay? If you've ever gone into a grocery store and seen the person stocking the Frito products, the corn chips and those kind of things, or somebody stocking the Pepsi or the Coca-Cola items, okay? Those people are not employees of the grocery store. They're employees of the entity. They're employees of Frito-Lay, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, and so on, right? Their job is not just simply to stock the shelves, but they're there to take stock of inventory. And then once they know how much has sold the last, then they can then reorder the items for the next day delivery, okay? Environmental and sustainability concerns, okay? We're starting to see environmental and sustainability concerns with regard to the movements, reduction of packaging materials, okay? Eliminating the styrofoam peanuts, okay? Most packaging material now are these inflatable plastic bags, okay? We're seeing shift from the old wooden pallets to plastic pallets, where essentially these can be used, have a much longer life and don't have to be scrapped, okay? We're starting to see computer applications such as SAP and Oracle, where ERP systems where it keeps track of all the data with regard to a particular business. okay? We're seeing this increased use of RFID tags to not only identify what a product is, but you know, what's on the pallet, how much of each one, and so on, okay? Some future trends, okay? We're starting to see artificial intelligence used with regard to logistics and supply chain management. One use that I've heard of just recently is several of these companies like Amazon and eBay are using artificial intelligence to determine whether an item should be returned or not, okay? So let's say you order an item and it's not what you liked or something like that, and the system determines that it would cost more to return the item than the item is actually worth. So in that situation, they'll just tell you to keep the item, okay? We're starting to see service-oriented supply chains where, again, we're dealing with services, so on. The Internet of Things where, again, everything's going to be connected, okay? My wife and I happened to go into a home for sale, and the refrigerator had a computer screen on it, and it was connected to the internet, and you could order material, you can order groceries from the internet, from your refrigerator. The thermostat in my house, it's connected to the internet, so I can lower the temperature or raise the temperature whenever I want through the internet, okay? Again, drones, we're starting, you know, this is, Amazon got started with using drones to deliver products and so on, okay? All right, so that concludes the first master chat, the master chat for Unit 1. If you have any questions, you can email me or you can email your instructor. They'll be more than happy to answer any questions, okay? Have a good term, and I wish you the best of luck in the course. Thanks, and good luck.